Hello and welcome back into the Nittany Dispatch. I am Audrey Snyder, and I told you on Saturday night in the press box that we would not be a solo show once again, but here we are. John is still on the mend, so it's you, me, chatting all things Penn State, and of course, the thing I didn't think we'd be talking about today is the very place where this show is going to start. It's with the reports coming out Tuesday night that Penn State is in the process of potentially, deal is not finalized yet as of recording this, Penn State potentially could be switching from Nike to Adidas. This is one of those deals that, if it comes to fruition, which it's certainly looking like it would, when you peel it back, I think once you get past the shock and awe for fans, which I get it, Penn State's been a Nike-sponsored institution for the last 30 plus years. You think about Joe Paterno, Phil Knight. This is a brand that you always associate Penn State football with, right? I mean, how many images did you see in your lifetime, probably a lot of them, of Joe Paterno and the black shoes, right? And the swoosh mark and the rolled up pant legs. Like, it's all part of the image, part of marketing, part of branding. But I do think that there is a bit of precedence out there when you look at what Adidas is doing in the marketing game. Just a couple weeks ago, Tennessee, same thing, goes from Nike to Adidas. And what I'm most interested in is, if and when this thing happens, what exactly are the parameters of the agreement? Because that, I think, is what really is going to make the most sense. My guess here, reading between the lines, would be when you look at Nike. I was thinking about this earlier when the news was breaking. I was teaching over on campus and I was driving home. Well, if you look at what are Nike's top brands in terms of college sports programs, right? And I was rattling this off in my head. You've got Ohio State, Oregon, Michigan, which, remember, you see a lot of the Jordan brand stuff with Michigan. You have UNC, obviously Air Jordan, insanely impressive brand. And you got Texas, right? So between Oregon, Ohio State, Michigan, Texas, UNC, I am not so sure that Penn State's Nike brand appeal, as good as it was, right, as much as fans seemingly liked it, the staying power, all of that, I am not so sure that they would have been able to get in that top tier of Nike money, right? Because that's what this comes down to, right? What is Adidas offering? Because when you look at it, okay, Tennessee's over there now, Nebraska's over there. Penn State has a chance to be a significant player in the Adidas money game. So that, to me, is where the interest is. There have been reports out there, I was looking at earlier today, that Penn State's money with Nike was estimated to be about $2 million per year. So again, what is that Adidas figure, and what are the components of it, right? Because Penn State isn't going to launch itself into a brand agreement if it doesn't make sense. And looking at some of the reporting around the Tennessee deal with Adidas, because I think that's really what you want to look at for like a baseline. The reporting around Tennessee, man, it is a little bit all over the place, and that some of it is at least $10 million a year with other incentives in terms of NIL money. That could push that deal upward to $20 million per year. That's what was reported by Chris Lowe, now of On3, formerly of ESPN at the time, surrounding that Tennessee deal. So I think that's what you want to look at, because for Penn State, yes, football is the big brand. That's the one that moves the needle. But this is a trickle-down effect for all of your programs when you undergo something like this. Again, if it happens, it's not a done deal when I'm reporting this Tuesday night, but it's something that is absolutely in the works. It's on the radar, and it's something that I would not be surprised at all if this becomes final here in the next week and a half. But again, this is not where I thought we'd be talking about Tuesday night as we kind of launch into FIU week. But again, it's significant, it's interesting, but I think when you take the totality of this deal, it speaks to also, and fans, I know I've seen the feedback and I've seen it since this happened, but when you think about the Beaver Stadium field, right, and the money surrounding that, let's see if I can get the name. West Shore Home Field. Yeah, West Shore Home Field at Beaver Stadium, right? I keep messing up the name, but you look at it, you look at the naming, the branding piece of that, right? You do that deal because it's field naming rights and it's money. And again, when you look at this new era of college sports and that 20.5 million number that you have for that rev share cap, you got to get the money from somewhere. And if Adidas is going to come in and make Penn State a significant player in the game, you got to be on board with that. And I also think it's important to note, too, that obviously the football component of this is significant. And if James Franklin wasn't comfortable with this, I am fairly certain that Penn State would not be at this point having these kinds of conversations this far along in the process. So I'm curious when we hear more from James Franklin, if and when this thing becomes finalized, kind of his thoughts on that. But I do not expect we will get any of that before this deal comes down. We'll hear from James Franklin next Wednesday night on the practice field, but I do not anticipate that this, again, would be a talking point at this point, just because he's never going to talk about things until they are finalized. But yeah, I think the thing for fans to keep in mind is, where is Penn State and the Penn State brand in that Nike hierarchy, and where could it be in the Adidas hierarchy as, you know, that premier player? And another interesting potential link to this, Louisville is an Adidas school, and Neely Bendapudi came to Penn State after her tenure at Louisville. So there are, I think, some commonalities. I believe when Pat Kraft was at Temple, they were an Under Armour school for a while. So again, we've seen brand deals change a lot with other schools, but it just isn't something that has happened here frequently. But again, it's something that's out there, and I just wanted to make sure I mentioned that at the top of the show tonight, because I know it is front and center of fans' minds. But I do promise we will talk some football here tonight. I will kind of unload my thoughts from early on this week. I was in the Beaver Stadium media room Monday, and James Franklin walked in, and it was about at that point where most of the reporters in the room, we realized, oh yeah, it's a holiday day. Your brain just does not work that way when it's football season. It was a James Franklin Monday news conference in the Beaver Stadium media room. And, you know, those media settings are interesting because you're always trying to tie up loose ends from the game before. And in non-conference play especially, you're trying to figure out the younger pieces to this roster and how did these guys grade out when the coaching staff went back and went through their evaluations. And one of the biggest takeaways I had from James on Monday was that Ethan Grunkemeyer, his performance impressed, right? I thought he impressed live when we watched it. You look at the 94-yard touchdown drive in the fourth quarter when he came in to replace Drew Allar. I thought it was promising. And while James Franklin did not publicly declare Ethan Grunkemeyer QB2, because remember, this was a week-to-week thing, I certainly got the impression that they very much liked what they saw from Ethan Grunkemeyer and they want to see more. James Franklin said that he felt Grunkemeyer looked better in the game Saturday than he had in some of his practices. And I asked him a little bit more about that, and specifically, you know, what is the value of the game reps when you're trying to especially evaluate a young quarterback? And he said, yeah, that's critical, because when you go back to it, all preseason, right, all training camp, you're out there, but the quarterbacks know they're not going to get hit. And if they do get hit, that defensive lineman is getting, as James Franklin said, they're getting their head ripped off for coming near the quarterback. So, you know, this is your chance to see how do they actually read a defense, right? How quickly can they make their reads, go through those progressions and unload the football? And he was really, really pleased with how Ethan Grunkemeyer did that. So we'll see Wednesday night on the practice field if Ethan's still getting those QB2 reps, which I would anticipate that he would be. But I think, again, this is a promising look, and this is something else too. You know, going into FIU week, you get to the point where you say, okay, yeah, Ethan Grunkemeyer hopefully, probably, presumably gets at least a fourth quarter. Again, when you look at kind of the evaluation piece there, another piece of, I guess we'll classify it as news. Intrigue, news, something that we probably would have been talking about Saturday, Sunday, had Penn State punted against Nevada, but they didn't punt. But we all were in the stadium when they announced Gabe Nwosu as the starting punter. So those of you, of course, that are here listening to the Nittany Dispatch, you most likely are a little bit more in the weeds probably than most of your average fans. And you know that this is a change, right? When you look at Penn State and the punting game, and it was okay, Riley Thompson was the guy, and this, you just kind of expected that he would be. But James Franklin said Monday, no, Gabe Nwosu is the punter. That Gabe beat out Riley Thompson this preseason and really had an eye-popping camp. And I now want to see Penn State punt because I want to see what it looks like, because the comparison that James Franklin made is a lofty one. He said that Gabe Nwosu's A-ball as a punter is the closest thing that they've had to Jordan Stout since Jordan Stout was here. So that is lofty praise. I mean, I know I hit on it Saturday in the post game and with King Mack and the return game and how Penn State thinks that they can make some more strides in special teams. And I think Gabe Nwosu is just a really great example of that. Not only as a punter, but James Franklin said he was really pushing Ryan Barker in the kicking competition, and that Nwosu drilled a 62-yard field goal in Beaver Stadium this preseason. Now, I don't know if we're approaching one of those situations that they had before with Stout, where Penn State, at the time, they had like that little catchy saying where it was like, I don't know, like maybe 55 and out was Stout or something like that. Like they had some kind of, and whatever an in was pin for Jake Pinniger. I don't know if we're approaching a situation like that with Gabe Nwosu, but I certainly think it's notable that Penn State has a different punter, and the fact that James Franklin spoke so glowingly. I also think college football Twitter is going to fall in love with Gabe Nwosu. When you look at his build, his physique, he does not look like your stereotypical punter. He is a big kid, and this is something that I remember a couple years ago when he got to Penn State. It was something that you watched him and you said, man, this guy like has the build of a lineman. And you say, okay, is he the punter? Are you sure? Like, this guy's the punter? And he is. And I was digging through his bio on Monday, and I was reminded that his hobbies include playing the cello and dissecting soccer matches. So I think there's going to be a lot to like, a lot of intrigue with Gabe Nwosu. And again, I'm curious to see him in game action. Also interested to get a chance to talk with him and pick his brain a little bit more, because it is not lost what he's been able to come in here and do, but also, you know, continuing to be a factor. And you talk about, right, these small margins when you're a team that is as good as Penn State is, right, and you're chasing a national championship. The strides, the improvements that you have to make come in these really small areas, these fine margins, and that's exactly where they're at right now. But let me take a quick break from the press conference rundown and tell you about our friends over at DraftKings. The rivalries, the marching bands, the upsets. Saturdays just got way more fun. College football is back. Think you know the game? Put your knowledge to the test with DraftKings Sportsbook and turn your picks into big payouts. With live betting, rivalry week odds boost, and more, DraftKings Sportsbook has everything you need to own every Saturday. Here's something special for first-timers. New DraftKings customers bet $5 and get $300 in bonus bets instantly. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and use code DISPATCH. That's DISPATCH for new customers to get $300 in bonus bets instantly when you bet just $5. In partnership with the DraftKings Sportsbook, the crown is yours. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. In New York, call 877-78-HOPENY. Text HOPENY 467-369. In Connecticut, help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. Please play responsibly. On behalf of Boot Hill Casino and Resort, fees may apply in Illinois. 21 plus age and eligibility varies by jurisdiction. Void in Ontario. Bonus bets expire 7 days after issuance. For additional terms and responsible gaming resources, see dkng.co/audio. Now, it's getting chilly out. Feels like fall is in the air in State College, and our friends at Roback have your apparel needs covered. Yes, Nick Singleton is one of Roback's collegiate athletes, and the We Are collection is out, and I've seen it. It looks really, really cool. I've seen fans wearing it at games. I've seen some of Nick Singleton's family members wearing it. Roback is one of my favorite brands, one of John's favorite brands too, Pretty frequently, you will see one of us or both of us wearing Rhoback, but new Rhoback users can use code TND20 to save 20% off your purchase. That's code TND, as in the Nittany Dispatch, TND20 to save 20% off your first purchase at Rhoback. Penn State's injuries, health, this is the time of year where we are seeing a lot of players that we didn't see last year. Guys like Keon Wiley, players like Andrew Rapplier, Cam Wallace, right, has the hurdle on Saturday and was so impressive that James Franklin said he was sitting in his man cave Saturday night and everybody in the house that was there with him hanging out was buzzing about Cam and said, you know what? James Franklin said, I'm going to call him right now. I'm going to call him. And in my head, I'm thinking, man, you're calling a player on a Saturday night. Good luck. And Cam Wallace answered and was really excited to hear from his coach. And James Franklin said he told him, hey, he was really proud of him because he knew what that moment meant for Cam and just how far and how hard he had to work to come back. I mean, there was a point last year when you look at his injury. I remember seeing him in a wheelchair, and it was one of those where you say, okay, how is this guy going to come back? How's he going to look when he comes back? And that was a massive, really good, feel-good moment. And I know it came out this week then after the game that Saquon Barkley had reached out. So you have that Penn State 26 on 26 connection there. But it was a feel-good moment. And there were some of those Saturday that James Franklin, again, highlighted Monday. And I think it's something that we're going to see, especially these next 2 weeks. I heard from Andrew Rapplier. He met with the media Tuesday morning on Zoom, and he was very honest about the challenges of coming back from his season-ending injury last year. And I said it all offseason. I'm going to continue to say it. Penn State's tight end room is still loaded. You look at Khalil Dinkins, you look at Luke Reynolds, you look at Rapplier, and the list goes on and on. I mean, they are a talented and deep room, even though it's obviously without Tyler Warren, right? It's a different new look group. But Rapplier is somebody that, had he not gotten hurt last year, I think right now he'd be somebody that we're buzzing about. He'd be somebody that we say, yeah, this is a guy who looks like he's going to be a big-time college football player. But because of the injury that opened the door for Luke Reynolds, we've seen Reynolds take advantage of it. I mean, Reynolds was TE2 and has been this preseason. But Rapplier is pumped to get back. And you could sense that energy, that enthusiasm. I mean, we saw it on the field Saturday when he gets in and makes a catch. There was a cathartic release for him after all of the hours spent rehabbing and working his way back. And I asked him, what was the mental hurdle that you had to clear? What was the thing that you needed to do where you said, okay, I'm good, I'm back now? And Rapplier told me that it was this preseason. It was the first day of camp, and he said he went out and he lost a one-on-one rep, and he said he was so disgusted with himself for losing that rep and knowing just how much time and energy he put in the rehab process to come back. And he said he just told himself, when he went out there day 2, day 3, that's not me. I'm confident in what I've done. I'm confident in how the knee feels and how he's responded to it. He was confident in the rehab that he did. And he said, you know what? He took off his knee brace and just said, all right, it's time to play. I'm back to who I was. And I think that's the guy that we're going to see moving forward. That's the guy we started to see on Saturday, and I think this is the guy we're going to continue to see throughout non-conference play. And once the season gets rolling, there is a massively high ceiling for Andrew Rapplier, and I think we're just starting to really scratch the surface of it. And I want to go back and watch, and I'll keep an eye on it for this weekend, but I believe he's since been playing with a sleeve, and I'll take a look at this at practice on Wednesday night. But you do hear sometimes from guys, like he mentioned, of the brace sometimes might feel like a hindrance where you feel more comfortable playing with the sleeve. But kind of on that rehab, on that injury front, it was interesting that Rapplier said freshman year, he was roommates with Cam Wallace. And so Wallace going through what was a really gruesome injury last year, Rapplier said, yeah, he went and visited Wallace as he was rehabbing and just really was like, man, kind of what he was going through in a way was like, okay, this is not nearly as bad as what Cam has to go through right now. So there was kind of definitely some bonding that happened over that. Theo Johnson was a guy, which I thought this was really interesting. Theo Johnson was someone who Rapplier was talking to last year ahead of the Orange Bowl. And he said, no Penn State player got on him quite like Theo did in terms of the tough love and the, hey, you got to put it together. You're a young guy, but we think a lot of you. But, there has to be some tough love there. And he said Theo Johnson was that guy for him. And he said that just was not Tyler Warren's demeanor. And, knowing Tyler Warren, talking to Tyler Warren, interviewing him, like you could see that just wasn't his personality. But Theo Johnson was such a huge leader for this team a couple years ago that it was interesting when you hear from, this next wave of tight ends, how Theo continues to influence them as well. And somebody else on the injury rehab, getting healthy, getting right front is defensive end Zariah Fisher. Fisher is someone that Rapplier said he was talking to last year, they were trying to keep each other's spirits up. James Franklin told us Monday that Fisher is close. He's close to playing. We didn't see it Saturday, but Franklin said when they arrived at the stadium, Fisher was excited and he wanted to play. And James Franklin brought that up because he said, I wanted to tell you guys, like, he's that close. And so Penn State, thought it was wise to kind of hold him off at this point, but I'm not sure when exactly we'll see Fisher back, if it's this week, if it's Villanova week. But the important part of this is that he's close, because once they get him back, I think you're going to just continue to see this defensive line really build that depth. I mean, you saw it with Kemiju, you saw it with Chaz Coleman, Jalen Harvey got the start, Malachi Williams. Like, they've got defensive ends that you want to see more of. But, they also have the luxury with this schedule where you can kind of sit back a little bit and say, hey, you know what? You need Zariah Fisher to be right for Big Ten play. You need him to be right for the games that really matter. And until you get to that point, I think, you're able to pump the brakes, right? And that's, as much as we all want to say, okay, yeah, this non-conference schedule, it's the paycheck games and it's not going to be super exciting. This is also the flip side of that, right? Where you're able to pump the brakes and say, well, let's focus on ourselves first and let's get guys healthy. Let's build depth. Let's look at QB2. Let's look at tight ends 2, 3, 4, 5. Let's look at these young linebackers. Let's look at a Keon Wiley who was injured last year, who James Franklin said, Wiley impressed him on Saturday against Nevada, but he just wants to see him go out there and just let it rip, right? Think less, kind of react more. I think we're going to continue to see it up front with the offensive line. We know they believe they have 7 starters, and they showed that against Nevada, and they're going to continue, ripping through that rotation, but also digging deeper into it, right? Because if these next 2 weeks go as you think they should go as you expect they go, you're going to get a really deep look at this roster before you then, head into a bye week and then reset and get ready in a hurry for the Ducks. So that's kind of the things that I want to look at again this weekend, is just seeing these depth pieces, seeing what happens. And I think the most important thing heading into the FIU game, the thing that I think has fans a little bit on edge, I said it Saturday, I'm still not overly worried about it, and I don't think people should be just yet either, but the run game. People want to see Nick Singleton and Katron Allen get rolling, get clicking. This offensive line that, so much is we've dissected and talked about, and how they could be the best O-line since 94, and, where could this group rank all time? Well, you want to see them take over games, and James Franklin hit on it again Monday. What Nevada was doing was smart. They want to see these receivers beat them. I would imagine FIU is going to say the same exact thing and say, okay, until Penn State proves they can do it consistently, you want to see if, what they can kind of give up. So you load the box, you come down, you say, okay, well, we're going to take away the run game and let's see what you can do on the perimeter. So you want to see if they can get that run game, get it going. You want to see Penn State be better in the red zone than they were. They've checked the box of creating takeaways, and they've gotten points off of those. But again, you just want to see them be more efficient in the red zone. And then once you get a little bit more in the weeds on this roster too, it's okay. Is King Mack back there out of the gate as your kick returner? I would think so. What is Zion Tracy's availability? And What, Devontae Ross, right? As he continues to get healthier, what does that look like? Is he somebody that steps up? Can Pena continue? I mean, this was one of the more impressive performances that we saw. So you want to see that receiving core continue, trending in the right direction. But yeah, I mean, it's a pretty slow week around here so far. Again, with the exception of Adidas. But yeah, I don't think there's going to be anything too crazy coming out of this week. It should be a little bit kind of cruising into the weekend here as the week winds down by about Thursday. But I will, because I am on the record here, and John can't be wrong. If he's not here to make picks, I mean, he just automatically is taking the loss on these last couple weeks. But I'm going to go with Penn State 50, FIU 7. Again, I think this is another blowout. This is much of the same. And the player that I think I will be talking about Saturday night, Sunday. I said last week that I was wrong for not picking Dani Dennis-Sutton and that it was stupid and I should have seen it coming. And I stand by that, but I'm going to keep it on trend here. And I'm going to say everybody wants the running backs to kind of get right. They want to see these eye-popping plays. I'm going to go with Nick Singleton and just say that I think we see a few of those highlight reel-worthy runs that kind of get everybody to pump the brakes a little bit and say, you know what, this run game's here. It's fine. So Nick Singleton's my pick. I got Penn State 50, FIU 7. I do want to mention another thing that'll be coming on the radar this week. Penn State women's volleyball. They raised their banner Friday night in Rec Hall, so the national championship celebration will be taking place. I'm in the process of working on a story about something that actually could fit in very well if you have an apparel change coming. But what I'm working on over on my Substack, insidethelions.substack.com, you can become a subscriber and get my content emailed right to your inbox. I'm having a lot of fun over there, and it's been really cool to kind of start building a community of people and have interactions and have chats and mailbags and stuff. It's been a lot of fun. So I'd love for y'all to check it out. But the thing I'm working on this week is what actually happens when you win, right? In terms of marketing and branding, what are some of those changes you have to make? And so I've had fun reporting on that story. And if you've ever watched Penn State women's volleyball, you know that they have the 7 stars on their jerseys for the 7 national championships. Well, when you win 8, you got to change a lot of things, including those jerseys. So I'm having fun with that. Also working on a really, really fun story that I will have out next week about a part of James Franklin's career that many don't know about or don't know much about. I've had an absolute blast starting to put that together, so that'll be out as well. But I will have my Keys prediction piece, as always, up by the end of this week over on my Substack as well. And I don't know. I don't want to jinx it. I'm saying that John hopefully is back with me post-game, so I don't have to keep doing this solo show. But we will wait and see as John continues to be on the mend here. But I appreciate you guys all tuning in. Please don't forget to rate, review, subscribe. Tell a friend about the Nittany Dispatch. We will be here all season long, dissecting wherever this season takes us and whatever logo Penn State has on their jerseys in the coming years. We're here to figure it all out. Thank you so much for listening. Have a nice night.